Hello, and today I will be talking about who I think is better, Sega CD slash the 32X or the Sega Saturn. 32X was made right before the Sega Saturn and did not do that well. The Sega CD was meant to compete with the Jaguar and the SNES. So, I'll see how both of these add-ons made to keep the Genesis alive, and then their next console, I'll see who is better, 32X slash Sega CD or the Sega Saturn. Now, I do not have any games that utilize both of these systems, but I do have some Sega CD games and some 32X games. So I will take a look at the Sega Saturn, and I'll just be comparing them in most ways. So I will get the Sega Saturn. I am back with the Sega Saturn. Now the Saturn obviously isn't as big because it's just a console. It doesn't have two add-ons leeching on it. But it only has two controller ports as well as the Genesis. That's something I really would have liked if Sega CD had two extra controller ports, because it was definitely big enough to have some. So I really would have liked if it had two controller ports. Now, not a whole lot to say about the Sega Saturn. Little top loader. So is the Sega CD, unless you have the Model 2, then it goes underneath the Genesis, not on the side of it. So, which I think looks the best, which that's probably the most obvious thing. The thing you first look at is its looks. So, I think 32X slash Sega CD looks a lot better than the Sega Saturn. Now, I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure that the Sega Saturn was 64 bits or 32. By that time, no one cared about bits anymore, so they didn't really market it. But this is 32X, 32 bits, and plus the 16-bit Genesis. So it has a lot of power to it. This is 3 different systems, mashing all of their RAM, all of their power, and all of their bits in one thing. 3 systems coming together to make one great thing. Just a mashup. But I think this looks a lot better. Now, games. Well, I'll show you some of the 32X games that I have. I will show you, I don't have a lot of Sega Saturn games, but I will show you some of them. And some of the Sega CD games and Sega Saturn games, except I only have 6 Sega Saturn games. So I will show you some of the games. I'm back, and I have the games. So the first games I will be looking at are the Sega Saturn games. Now, 3 good games for the Sega Saturn that I have. Madden 98. The football games aren't all that bad. Black Hawk Down, which, it's not good. I would buy it for $4. And then Virtual Tennis, which doesn't even have the front. So, yeah, Sega Saturn game. Because they had to put them in those huge, oversized boxes. And those are probably my 3 best games for the system. Even though Black Dawn and Virtual Tennis are terrible, I don't have a whole lot of games for the system. I wonder, it only lasted 2 years. So there weren't a whole lot of good games for it. Now I will show you some of my good games for the 32X and the Sega CD. Now, my good 32X games are Star Wars, Rebel Assault, and Doom. Doom is the best game out of all of these. Buy Doom for your 32X slash Sega CD. Even though you only need the 32X, I would have both of them. Tommy Cat Alley, bad FMV parts in it, but if you figure out how to play it, I think it looks kind of like a fun game. Dracula, if you get past all the FMVs, It's a regular side scroller. It's okay. Cliffhanger, same way. You get past all the F and V's, then it's an okay side scroller. Now there's a game that I would suggest you get if you have a Sega CD, which is Surgical Strike. Get Surgical Strike. It is so funny. The bad acting is unbelievably bad. So, I would get this. I really would. It is really get it. It's so bad. It's good. So I would suggest getting this. Surgical Strike. So, looking at both of them, and now another thing you gotta think about is you got your games, you got your looks. Now, how well do they hold up? Well, Sega Saturn, my model, didn't hold up that well. There is another model that holds up a lot better. But you gotta think, when you got 32X and the Sega CD and the Genesis, those are three different things, and if any one of those goes wrong, then everything's gone wrong. And especially it'd be terrible if your Genesis went wrong, because then you can't use either of them. So anyway, the Sega CD is a neat piece of hardware. I like some of its games. I like laughing at some of its other games. It just gets a lot of laughs out of you. 32X, I love Doom. I love a lot of the virtual racing games, and Star Wars Arcade. Those are good games. Sega Saturn wasn't around long enough to have good games. Didn't even have a Sonic game on it. I mean, why? At least you had Sonic CD and Knuckles and Chaotix. Knuckles Chaotix for the 32X and Sonic CD for the Sega CD. But you didn't have anything for the Sega Saturn that was Sonic. So, not a lot of games for it. Not a lot of good games for it. The 3 games I picked out, I hate. But they're still my best games out of the whole system. So, if there aren't any good games on it, I would not suggest getting a Saturn. Unless you're a collector, or you want to review it, then buy a Model 2. But don't buy the model that I have. I've said this in all my Sega Saturn videos. Don't buy the model that I have. Buy the other model. It's more reliable. So, I'll take a closer look at a lot of the buttons and a lot of the wiring. So this has power, access, open. Pretty simple. Power cables just go into the television, go into the wall. Nothing special. Just gonna set that right there for right now. Now, if you thought hooking up 32X Sega CD and Genesis was easy, think again. Alright, so you might be looking at this and think it's not that bad. They all have their own power supply. 3 AC adapters, that's right. It's not a normal plug. Nope. It's a big box you gotta plug into the Surge. I can't even have all 3 of them hooked up at the same time. Now, one notable thing is that the AV port on the Genesis goes from the Genesis to the 32X. Then you take another AV port from the 32X, and it goes to your wall. I don't know why. They just didn't have it coming out of the Genesis and not need this wire whatsoever, but they're weird like that. Sega is weird. They made a freaking CD add-on in the early 90s. And like I said, they all have their own AC adapter. Now, another good thing about the Sega CD, which I feel like I should mention, is that I can play music discs. So that is pretty cool. Also, you can just slide your Genesis cartridges into here. They all, 32X and Genesis carts, both work. Or they both fit in the same one, so. That's this. Power reset right there. Sega Saturn didn't have a reset button. Nope. So, yeah, open right there. Says it. It's kind of hard to see, but it it opens it. So, this one has a lot of bad wiring, a lot better of games, a lot more likely to break down, a whole lot more likely to break down, and then you have something that if you get them all too, you know it's going to last a while. You know you're going to have nothing but bad games, and only has 2 controllers. Well, I already said they both. So, yeah. I really wish flames would have come out the side of these. And same for the 32X. I wish flames would, like, come out the side of those. Those little holes in the side of it. Let me detach this from the Sega CD so I can better show you those holes that flames should have come out of. Flames spurting out the side. What made it so much cooler? Now, all of these, besides the Genesis, 32X, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, they are all considered commercial failures. Sad thing, too. 'Cause I don't like the Sega Saturn. I think it's atrocious. Buy a 32X or a Sega CD. And if you've got the money, or you might buy one and wait later, buy both of them eventually, because they are both awesome. 32X generally has better games. Doom, Star Wars Arcade, and Virtual Racing. But that's only because it can't handle FMV games, so you don't have FMV, which makes the 32X worth getting. So, the 32X is also cheaper than the Sega CD, and it's better, I think. But, out of the combination, out of looking at what has the most power, I think 32X, Sega CD, and Sega Genesis can handle more than the Sega Saturn. So, thank you for watching my review and just looking at these practically 4 consoles: Saturn, CD, 32, and Genesis. I compared 3 systems to 1. Those 3 systems beat this thing, even though this is the newest. This is newer than all of them. But thank you for watching, and like I said, get a 32X, or a Sega CD, or both, but don't get the Sega Saturn. It's not worth it. I already regret it. So thank you for watching.